Good evening, Diane Neubauer. Welcome to RunChats with Ron Runs NYC. How are you doing this evening?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited that you could join me so quickly after your amazing race most recently. It's awesome when the timing works out like that. So thanks so much for juggling your very busy schedule and working to get you on here as quickly as we could.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Cool. So tell the Run Chats audience a little bit about where you grew up, what was family life like as a kid. Just give us a little background on yourself.
Sure. So I grew up as a Army brat. I think, that's what we get called. My dad was career Army. We moved around a lot. Mostly we stayed like on the East Coast. I did do a couple of years of high school in Iowa. So in the Midwest, we were overseas for a little bit, but a lot of time in Northern Virginia. My mom was a nurse. I'm one of three kids. I have an older brother, 2 years older than me, and a younger brother, 2 years younger than me. So only girl. But my parents had us in every, I think you asked, like every sport growing up. I was really bad at everything, really uncoordinated. But we tried. So when I found running in high school, I decided I wanted to run. We had just moved to Iowa. I was like, I want to make new friends. And cross country had like a preseason camp before school started. So that was like the perfect leeway into, getting to know some people as the new kid.
What a great way to make friends, right?
Yeah. So that kind of started my running career. But yeah, I mean, I had a great childhood, athletic family. My dad was a runner. We joke, my mom has some like health issues, but she's super competitive and super driven, and she would have been an Olympian if like her body let her. So
love it. And we share the middle child syndrome. So we're always like, we're fighters naturally. We're fighting to get attention because, the firstborn always gets usually the most attention. And then, you got your younger brother or younger sister to look out for. And, I know me, I was always like standing on a table, just like yelling as loud as I could, mom, I'm here, I'm over here. And that's why I always talk loudly, get attention. You always got to get your mom's attention. So that worked for me. I don't know. Did it work for you, or you didn't have these issues yourself?
I feel like I have middle child syndrome a little bit, but I was the only girl. So I don't know. I think it kind of helped.
Yeah. And how are you tight with your brothers?
I am. Yeah, we're all super close. I have a brother who lives in Philly, and a brother who lives in Denver. And they both used to run. My little brother, his first marathon, he ran a 2:51. So I was proud that I beat that finally. The family record, him and my dad were like tied. But that was before chip timing, and they're joking because I ran in the endorphin pros, and they're like, yeah, but you had carbon plated shoes. So very competitive, but I think they're going to let me have the family record. But yeah, we're super close. Even though we're far apart, and COVID's kind of made it hard the past, year or so to get together, but every chance that we can, we definitely do it.
That's great. You got to love, you have sibling rivalry going on, but you got dad rivalry. You got the whole mix in play. And I just love that stuff. And trash talking has to be involved when it comes to family. Family pride's on the line, fastest runner, that's all they had. They had to go somewhere, carbon shoes, blah, blah, blah. You can't, you earned it. It's, hands down too, 6 minutes. I mean, for everybody at home, we're going to spend the balance of the episode at the end really just talking about Diane's amazing race recently. And it was at the McKirdy Marathon, right? Where you ran 2:45, just like totally, absolutely crushed it. And your PR before that, if I think I remember correctly, when we were changing notes back and forth, was it 3:07 coming in and you ran 2:45?
It was. I ran 3:07. Gosh, a fall of 2018, I believe. So between that, time of span, because it had been almost 2.5 years since I'd raced. I had my son, and then COVID happened. So that was really my first opportunity to run a marathon.
Wow. Just amazing. I love to hear stories about people taking, huge chunks of time off like that, but there's so much else that we want to get to first, like leading up to your big race and all of that. And I love people from the family side that have that that competitive juices flowing. Clearly you have that in your family, the competitive spirit's there. And, it exists amongst the mom and dad, of course, as well as your brothers. And I think it just makes great dynamics. It's great energy. It usually extends to everything. It's in sports. I mean, even if you're playing Risk or Monopoly or games, it's like nobody ever wants to lose. Everybody wants to win. And I know myself, I have only one son, only child, my ex and I. She was a 253 marathoner. I used to coach her. And I never let my son win at anything. And people used to think I was crazy. I was like, absolutely not, man. He's going to have to kick my ass if he's beating me at anything. And I will never forget the first time he smoked me at the Spring Lake 5-mile race. I had him in my sights the whole way, just thinking I was just going to run him down. And I got to the last corner, which was like maybe 3/4 of a mile to the finish. It was one of those long finishes like Boylston is for Boston. And he just ran away from me, man. He just like put it into hyperdrive. And I was so proud of him because, and totally cool with parents who are the other side, who like really encourage their kids and always want them to feel that super positive self-esteem. So they kind of like let them win and stuff. But that was never me, man. It was like, you're going to win something, man. You're earning it. I don't care what it is. So it's just fun. I love to hear that kind of family dynamic stuff.
Yeah. My husband did not come from a competitive family. So he's like, oh man, like we're playing a game tonight. Like, it's like, if my brothers are there, a mom or my dad, it's bad. No one wants to play games with our family, but it's fun. It's all in love.
Yeah. Well, I think it probably took time, right? You had to kind of bring him into the fold. You probably had to bring him in slowly and just like get him adjusted to all that, because obviously if he's a keeper and you want him and you want him to be part of it all, you got to, this is the things that we have, the family dynamics. You got to figure out, okay, my mom's this way, my brother's this way, and we want to make sure he sticks around and he's part of us for the long haul.
Yeah, for sure.
Good stuff. So sports, you said you were uncoordinated. I find that hard to believe, but I'll take you at your word. So other than running, you really didn't play any sports in high school, just got started running when you moved to Iowa. That's when it started for you, right? And you ran on the team? I
did. So I ran cross country and I ran track. And we spent the first 3 years of my high school in Iowa. I went to Bettendorf High School. So that was, had an amazing coach there. I did. So I think my freshman year, I found a lot of success. I went to like states in cross country on the team, and then also in a couple events in track.
And what was your favorite event back then?
I think like the 2-miler or cross country. I mean, track wise, I think we only did the 3,000, so it wasn't quite 2 miles, but anything longer. Like I always loved anything longer. And like, I could run like the same pace for the 2-mile, close to like the 1 mile. And like my 800 was like half a mile. Like, I was definitely always knew I'd be like better at the longer the race went, the more successful I was at it.
The endurance gene was there. And it's funny, as runners, we really don't know what we're really suited for or predisposed for. And sometimes it takes, a good coach. Sometimes it just takes jumping in, a coach throws you in DMRs or puts you in different events. And, it just kind of naturally, evolves to the surface, or you figure it out. But yeah, you have that feel. If you like the longer stuff, you enjoy it. And, I was a college baseball player. So the only running I ever did was stealing bases and chasing down balls outfield, but I loved running. Most kids viewed it as a punishment. Most of the coaches gave it to us more or less as a punishment. Go run stairs, go do this, go run laps before batting practice. And I never really viewed it that way, but I never ran in a race, until like my mid-30s. So for me, my whole experience with marathon running in Boston didn't start to my mid-30s. And I ran in the 99th and the 100th Boston. So it just was epic. And, that experience of being there for that and still doing it today, qualifying by, I don't know, like 42-minute buffer or whatever I had to be there for the 125th, it'd be pretty insane because there's probably not going to be that many people that ran in the 100th and be in the 125th. There'll be some for sure, but it won't be a lot of people. So that'll be really neat. Now, did your dad run Boston also?
He did. So we were pretty little when he was doing his marathons. He used to be the marathon coach at West Point. He taught there for a while when we were little. But he was always, super fit in the Army. He got out of the Army when I was a senior in high school. So, I mean, he would not take it easy on me, especially when I started running, like I would cry, like I'd be like, this is so hard. I hate running. Why do I have to run? And, I think he saw a little bit of talent there, but my work ethic, and I mean, running's hard when you first start, right? Like for anyone. But yeah, like he's like a beast still. He doesn't run so much anymore. His back's all messed up, but he walks and lifts weights, every morning. But yeah, so seeing him, like I always knew about the Boston Marathon. I didn't run a marathon until I think it was 24, 25. But I was a teacher right after college. And I remember like we did the national anthem every morning. I taught at a Catholic school and we do prayers. And I remember thinking that Boston was happening, and that was the year of the bombings. And after that happened, like I was thinking about it, and then, but later that day you heard what happened and how awful it was. And I was thinking, man, I really want to run Boston. Like my dad ran Boston. And then, when the bombings happened, I was like, I really need to do this. And that I had done some halves, but that's when I kind of started that next fall. I did my first marathon.
I think it's more common than you would think how it inspired people in that way. So many of us, when something tragic happens or bad happens, a lot of people are just fearful, or they get scared, or they retreat further. And that was one of the years I wasn't running Boston. I was on a company retreat. We were down. I don't even remember what island I was on, and my phone just went bananas. Like everybody, it just went crazy. Everybody was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, I'm not in Boston. Like, what's going on? Because I don't remember where we were. We're out of the country. It was an island somewhere, but not great media coverage. And then all of a sudden it started to come into focus, and it was just like, wow, like, yes, this happened, like beyond belief. And to take something so precious to the whole community up there, and to all runners, and just a lot of people do go the other way. But a lot of friends of mine who hadn't run in years, or had maybe not even run their first, that was where they were inspired. They said, I want to run Boston one day. I want to go back or up to Boston, and I want to take part in that. And obviously, Meb winning it that next year is just one of the most epic things of all time. You get chills watching it over and over and over again. And the 2018 race, the monsoon race, I actually have my Boston official finisher shirt signed by Meb and Des. So they're the last two American winners, but also, on that, we finished in 2018 in just the most historic, insane conditions ever. So super cool that something bad got you thinking about that and said, I'm going to take this step. So did you just start out, and just said, I'm going to run a marathon? Did you put a plan together? Like, how did that first work for you when you first, made that decision? How did you work the process?
Oh gosh. So my first marathon was a disaster. If you want to look up my time. I think it's been said before, I ran 350. So I think I came in like, at the time, my PR for like the half was like 137. So I was like, okay, I can qualify for Boston easy. And I was training a little bit, some of my long runs with my brother, who was way faster because he ran 251. So he would just like kill me. I mean, I don't think I really understood distance running. My dad kept saying like, your first marathon is just an experience. Like, don't just like do it. And I was like, I'm going to qualify for Boston. This is going to be easy. And I like hit mile 20 and hit the wall. And I think I walked like the last 6 miles. I mean, it was terrible. So the next year I came back with like a solid plan of, I couldn't even tell you how many goos I took. I mean, I'm sure my nutrition was terrible. Like I had no idea what I was doing. But you learn.
That's first off, 350. I can tell you firsthand, and this too. There are many people who work their whole lives and maybe will never run a 350. So, you don't mean that in an insulting way to anybody else,
no,
but you're saying it as if like it's a bomb and it's a disaster. And sure, you may have walked the last 6 miles. I mean, I similarly in New York on First Avenue, I've told this story in the pod multiple times. I had to go to the bathroom on First Avenue because I'm eating like power bars like they're candy. I don't know that like this is going to make me have to go to the bathroom. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. You're talking about not knowing what you're doing. I had no clue what I was doing out there, and I went in there to that stall, which was a real bathroom. It was not a porta-john. It's over where the basketball courts are on First Avenue. And I actually could not get back up off the stall. my legs were locked. They were literally locked, like somebody cemented them together. And I was like using my elbows to kind of pry myself up and got back there. And I finished and I had to walk a bunch, but 3:39, my first one. And you don't forget that. But it is just like your dad said, it's an experience. Hey, you could have punted. You could have not walked the last 6 miles and got out of there. I could have like stayed in the bathroom there and said, I'm not doing this anymore. I think where I was in First Avenue was probably only 17 or 18 miles. And I still had like another 8 miles to go. So it was going to be a pain situation. But you know what? Those situations, a lot of people, again, they run for cover. They're like, I'm out of here. This isn't for me. Or how many people say, I'll never run another marathon again, like after they cross the line, but then they come back and they put a real plan together and you figure it out. So that was your first experience. And where did you go from there?
I was living in Philly at the time. So I just did the Philly Marathon the next year. And I was coaching at the college I went to. We had a new coach come in that didn't coach me in college. And his name is Joe Dare. He still coaches like in the Philly circuit. He's I tell him he traded to the bad side. He's at Gwen and Mercy now. But I was like, hey, Joe, I want to run. Like, I want to qualify for Boston. Like, what can I do? And he just set up a really simple plan. Like, it didn't even have much speed work in it, but just to help me, build volume at the time. I was teaching and working a couple jobs. I was like, I can only commit to 5 days a week of running. So it was a very simple program, but it got the job done. I, ran and qualified for Boston.
And, your relationship with what was that like?
I mean, I feel like he's only a few years older than me. But we're still friends today. He just had his first baby. So that's super exciting, him and his wife. But I think he just is really like passionate about running and just like always is telling people to kick butt, but like, it was the first time someone like really took the time to like, be like, you can do this and kind of invest some time in me. And like that it mattered that I wanted to qualify for Boston, that I could do it.
Yeah, I think one of the things I always like to dive into is the impact, people have had for us in our lives. And it can be a mom or dad, it can be brothers, it can be a teacher in school. It doesn't have to be about sports. It can be somebody who just, helped you become a great writer or something that really matters to you outside of your running life. And, the impact, it doesn't have to be from somebody who's a lot older than you. It could even be somebody who's younger than you. We never really know, the mentor-mentee relationship, or even if it isn't a mentor relationship, it's just somebody who believes in you, someone who actually, and it doesn't have to be about speeches and rah-rah. It's just that you just know that they know that you can do something more than maybe you think you can, or that they just know that no matter what happens, you're going to do even better than you even dreamed of. And, finding those kind of people along the way in our life, it really helps us. And it just prepares us and sets us up for success. And even if we hit a really hard day, we still handle them better. And when we hit rough patches, in particularly in races, the thoughts that we develop and the feelings that we develop and, the confidence maybe that really kind of comes to the surface. It's very different than just believing in yourself. When other people who really matter to you, of course, your husband, your wife, your significant others, of course, they believe in you. They're always going to be by your side. But that's why that coach relationship, matters so much.
Yeah, for sure. And he was so nice. Like he did it just kind of on the side, I'd always be asking him like, hey, like, what do you think I should do? So that was awesome. And he was able to run, with me and kind of pace me for most of the marathon. I think he jumped in like halfway through. I know you're not supposed to do that, but that was super helpful for like pacing and strategy wise. So that was super, it was super exciting. And because, Philly is such a late marathon, for people who don't know, it's November. I didn't qualify for Boston till the next April.
Yeah. You're like the full year then behind.
Yeah. And that was 2016.
Yeah. The whole pacing thing, that always bothered me. And even I'm even just speaking from experience that my ex and I are like the best of friends today, and we're divorced for a really long time. My son's just graduated college a year ago already. He's 23 years old. We met through running, and I coached her for years. And I thought it was absurd. I mean, women can pace each other, men can pace each other, but a man can't run with a woman if it's his wife or his girlfriend, or even if it is a coach. Like I just, and then you can have real pacers at races, right? At all of these like meets and other races, it's completely okay. And Kipchoge and the elite women can be paced in elite races. So the whole damn thing just doesn't make any sense to me. We run up alongside people at every level, 5-hour marathon, 4-hour marathon, 3-hour marathon, 2 hours and 30 minutes. That's what we're in it for. I've always found people who needed me, and I've always tried to be that person who'd help somebody else. If I didn't even feel it well that day, but somebody came up on me and said, oh man, you've really been helping me. And, just stick with them, even if you're not having your best day, what a difference it makes. And I used to run with my ex a lot, and, I'd run, back then I could run a 240 marathon and she was running 253. So like a half marathon pace for her, a PR would be like marathon pace for me. So we were like great to be able to kind of help each other out. And then girls that she compete with in races be complaining and stuff. And it's like, me? Like, you think she can't run that fast if I wasn't running with her? So I know exactly what you're saying. And I just don't, the whole thing doesn't really jive with me. So where did you go from there? So that was, your first qualification for Boston. And what time did you run in that race when you guys like worked together and pulled together such a great day?
3:27.
So 3:27. So a huge gain. So you said 3:50, right? Or something like that. So you go 3:27. And how did you feel? Like, I mean, you had to feel like super strong, super positive, right? I mean, how did the day go?
I mean, I felt great. I don't think I ever I guess looking back, I probably felt like some pain in that marathon, but it was just like one of those, like, we had the pacing plan, it followed to a T. I never really hurt. I mean, like the last mile, I mean, everyone who runs a marathon hurts at some point, but I made my goal, and that was super exciting. It was just a great, if I look back, that was like one of the not most effortless marathons, but just like a really great day.
Fantastic. And they do happen. They don't happen that often, but they do happen. And some days, it also, the weather plays such a role. Like 2018 Boston, so crazy. Year, 6 days after the monsoon in Boston, I ran London and it was over 80 degrees in London. So, I mean, running a marathon 6 days apart would be one thing if it was like Boston and New York City. It's Boston and London, man. You're getting on a plane and flying across the pond. Total time change difference. I was in the hypothermia tent, man. My body temp was like, I don't even know, like some crazy number. I don't even want to say it out loud, but I know one thing, man, I was like frozen and they couldn't warm me up, and they finally got me sorted. And then you go from hypothermia to heat stroke, which is my favorite post on Instagram, hypothermia to heat stroke in 6 days. But, so the weather, when you get a good day, then the nutrition, it still matters, but it's not going to impact you as much. You get a really warm day, don't get the right amount of electrolytes in, or you get too much water, you got hyponatremia, you got all these crazy things to worry about. What do you use? What do you personally like to use in terms of like gel, drinks? Like, what do you use out there, when you're racing?
Well, since working with McKirdy Trained and James, we've really worked, I've been working for 13 months. Like, we've really worked on our nutrition for race day. And so I use UCAN before. So I kind of preload with a little bit of UCAN and their hydrate. And it's been like a game changer. I use it for all my long runs, all my workout days. I'll drink it because I'm a early morning, with young kids. I get out the door super fast, so I don't even drink coffee. Most days I literally roll out of bed. So I do UCAN, and then I've stuck with hammer gels I've probably been taking them for I've taken them the past few marathons, and I just they work, and I haven't swayed. They're pretty low in sugar because like some of the higher sugar ones really mess with my gut. So that seems to work. I like the preload because then I can start taking gels in an hour versus a half an hour. But I would say this past year I've really practiced. I used to be like, oh, I feel good, I don't need a gel. Or like, oh, I'm going to end my long run at 2 hours and 5 minutes. I'm not taking that 2 hour gel. And James is like, no, take the gel. And I had no nutrition issues this marathon. Like even taking, I think I ended up taking 4 gels, but like it was fine. Like where normally I'm like, oh God, I have to take this again. Like this is going to be awful because I didn't always practice it on race day.
So that's such great advice. So now at this point, we're transitioning into you connecting with James and starting to work with James. And I've had at least 2, maybe 3 of his runners on my show at some point or another. I met James down at the Houston Marathon in maybe 2018. Great guy. We just had a chat. He was talking to a couple of his runners and I knew them well. And, so I know his reputation is super in the run community and he's doing good things. How did you end up working with James? I mean, did you just like find him on Instagram? Like did friend of a friend, like how did that work out? Because I always like people to share this stuff because somebody might hear it and say, oh, okay, that's how they chose this coach or how, because it's important. It's not just, you're working with a coach and they're great. Like, how did you end up like working with him?
Okay. So I guess we can backtrack a little bit. So I ran Boston 2016. I got pregnant right away with my first son, who's now 4. His name is Luke. And, obviously I ran a little bit through my second trimester, kind of stopped running. But I guess when he was 18 months old, I did the Frankfurt Marathon and I ran 3:07. And that was like a huge breakthrough. Coming off, there was a lot of stuff going on after he was born, but I found a good group of moms to run with. And we kind of, I just started running more miles and running really consistently. And I saw a lot of progress. Pretty much right after the Frankfurt Marathon, I got pregnant right away with my second son. So I was very lucky. I ran up until I was like almost put on bed rest at 35 weeks pregnant. I did the Paris Marathon. I did a couple halves with friends. Like that baby, he ran everywhere with me in my belly. And I was training, I had him and I had qualified for Boston 2020. And, I really wanted to make running a priority after Noah, he's 18 months old now, was born, because I felt like I kind of lost that with my first son. And I just know like I'm a better person and mom when I have running in my life. And so I think the goal to look forward to Boston was like huge. And I was using kind of the same program, which was based on Jack Daniels, kind of his book and what some friends had helped me piece together things, and using your VO dot, which James also uses. So I'm training, for Boston, and I'm seeing like really good improvements in my workouts. Like one workout, I almost PR'd my half time. And I'm like, I feel like I could break 3 hours, but like Boston might be too soon. I had 2 C-sections. Like, I wasn't sure it would happen. And then Boston got canceled. And I was like, well, here I am. I'm running the highest mileage I am. I'm getting to be in like the fittest shape that I've ever been. And what do I do with this? And I still kept in contact with Joe, and he had recommended McKirdy trained because one of his friends who OTQ'd under James, he's like, she loves him. And so I reached out to him, and then he called me, and I had reached out to a couple other coaches. And the minute I talked to him, I'm like, sold. I want to coach with you. All right. I want to work with you. I want you to be my coach.
That's great. I love the backstory because it's important. Because some people just go online and there's a lot of tremendous coaches. The depth of coaching that's available to runners has never been so strong and so sound, filled with just so many terrific choices. If you want to become a marathoner, a good half marathoner, a miler, you want to focus on track and field, cross country, you want to become an ultra runner, across any discipline, you can find someone with real expertise, real skill. So I do always like to kind of connect the dots on that. That's great. Now, I know, you had mentioned, when Luke, maybe, I don't know if it was after Luke was born, that you had some struggles or difficulties. Do you want to talk about that at all? Because I've had a couple of moms on here who've talked about postpartum before, just a couple episodes back. Kristen was on, and I just love her to death. And she's doing great things. I mean, she lost her maybe her best friend or one of her best friends in the world to postpartum. And, you know, she started a charity initiative and they're raising money for the family, and they're doing a bunch of, I knew they do a run at Mother's Day and a few other things around the course of the year centered on it. And, you know, she's kind of made it her life's mission, blogging about it and other stuff. So if you want to, great. If you don't want to, that's totally good. It's up to you, Diane.
Yeah. I mean, of course, you know, I think I've always suffered a little bit like depression, anxiety. You know, I had some like body image and eating issues all through high school and college that led to a lot of running injuries. And I think after I had my son, the anxiety just like crept in really strongly, but like I didn't know it at the time. And, you know, with anxiety, I think most of the time comes depression because I was so like anxious all the time that something was going to happen to my son. That I wouldn't leave him, and I just didn't do it. It just made life so hard. I was just really overwhelmed. And, you know, I tried, you know, I wanted to get back to running. I was very, you know, I followed a lot of mother runners, and they were out there doing all, you know, pushing their kids and doing amazing things. And I wasn't doing that. And it was hard. Like it just made it harder because here I am like feeling this way already, so overwhelmed, so anxious. And I felt like I didn't have an escape from it. You know, I took my son running in the stroller and he would scream the whole time. And my husband would be like, go for a run. I have the baby. And I would run by the house and just hear him screaming. And I'd come back inside the house. And it was just hard. We were living overseas at the time. My husband's in the Air Force. So we weren't near family. Like we had great friends, but it's different. So I really, you know, I had run with some other women that were moms even before I was a mom. And I had one reach out and really encourage me. There's this military running group. They're a nonprofit. They're at many bases overseas and in the US called Stroller Warriors. And she's like, we're all doing this torch run, which was this night run in Germany, like a 4-miler, I think. And she's like, come out and do it. And I was like, I'm not in racing shape. Like I barely have run. Like my son was 7 months old. And I think like I'd maybe run like 7 miles in one go, like since having him. I mean, I would run like here and there, but it was very sporadic, not consistent. And she's like, just come out and do it. So I remember I like made my husband come because I was so nervous, and I breastfed Luke at the start, and I breastfed him after the race. And, you know, I met these other moms, but I don't know if none of them had like their babies with them. And I'm pretty shy at first. So, but you know, I got to the starting line, I guess, long story short. And I don't remember what time I ran. It didn't matter, but I think I wrote to you. It was the first time I felt like I could breathe. And I'll never forget that feeling. Like it was dark, and in Germany, they have all these torches lit up, but they were like, it was literally fire torches, like open flame, like, you know, you're trying to like dodge them so you don't catch on fire. Like Germany has they have like, no, their safety stuff is way crazier than the US. But I was like, I have to run. And I remember like my husband was like, I haven't seen you this happy in months. And I ended up meeting a couple of moms that lived in my neighborhood, and we just started meeting like at 5 a.m. every morning to run, and on the weekends. And one of them was training for a marathon. So I was like, oh, sure, I'll keep running your miles with you. And kind of ended up help coaching her a little bit, because even though she would run a lot, like her maybe knowledge wasn't always there, you know, how to run smarter a little bit. But that, you know, I kind of like found running again in a whole new way as a mom. And it's, you know, my kids know like mom runs, and they get pushed a lot in the stroller. They get thrown out in the garage some days when I run on the treadmill, but I think finding running again in motherhood has like saved me.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I could see your shoulders relax. I could see how happy you were talking about that. And I felt the same thing, you know, talking about that really powerful stuff with Kristen. It's hard for, obviously men can't understand, you know, postpartum specifically. There's no way we could ever understand, you know, we're not carrying a child. We don't have the child. We're not afraid the way a mom would be to leave their child alone when they're crying because, you know, you just given birth, he's a few months old. And, you know, these fears, it's overwhelming, it's gripping. And then anxiety, you're not sleeping well, you don't feel well, you don't feel like yourself. There's nothing about it that's normal. And the hormones are so strong. And running is the greatest elixir for like everything. And I just wish I could convince more people, particularly friends my own age, who just have all the excuses. Oh, I can't run anymore. I can't do this. Yes, you can. Sure, you can. It starts with just walk at first, you know, just walk and then run a little bit later. Or, you know, even if you just go on long walks with your dog, just start doing some exercise and being outside. You know, if COVID has taught us anything, man, the world's a dark place when you're inside all the time. It can be an incredibly dark place. And although I'll never understand what postpartum is, you know, being injured for 3 months and not being able to run, for 30 years of my life, I've never had a serious running injury, which most people don't believe, but it's true. Sure, I've had muscle things and ligaments and tendon stuff, but minor stuff. You know, you take a week off, you rest, you take a few days off, you rest, but I've never had a serious issue. I've never had a stress fracture or any kind of major thing. People are walking around in boots, all this stuff. You see every runner on Instagram, it seems like everybody's had something happen. And for 3 months to have running taken out of my life, it's been a life-changing experience, and certainly not in a good way. Because I just realized that I could go out during COVID times at 1:30 in the morning, because I'm a man, I don't have to worry about my safety the way women do, and they do need to worry about if somebody's following them or watching where they run on Strava or other things. These are real world things that every woman has to worry about, where they run and when they run and who knows where they're going to go. You know, I went out frequently because sleeping patterns are all over the highway. People don't even know what day it is during COVID. I mean, you know, it's the middle of the afternoon is nighttime. I mean, you're up till 3:30 watching Netflix, or I'm reading books. And I'd gone out many a time at 1:30 in the morning and came back feeling like the Pope just absolved me of all my sins. And, you know, my life was in the best place ever, and slept like a baby, because just that transformation of being able to put my shoes on. And I close every podcast saying, lace them up, keep lacing them up, keep getting out the door, and always remember to stay in the fight, because running is the cure for so many things that we have. And then you, by going to that 7-mile run, you know, and you brought your husband and you're breastfeeding your baby, you do the run, you're breastfeeding your baby, Luke, after the run's over, but you met these other moms, you connect like instantly, because it's just the way running is. There's no 3-month period to get to know somebody. No, you run one run together and you're friends. That's the way it works. It may seem bizarre to anybody else, but it's not to us. Like, I'll help you. I'll help you with your training. I'll do runs with you. And the next thing you know, like, you start to feel completely different. Like, how did it go from there, from where you were, you know, before that run to like moving forward?
I mean, honestly, it was just, you know, I think they convinced me to sign up for Frankfurt. We did a couple halves together. I mean, we were best friends. My husband ended up deploying when my son was a year old. And I mean, we would take Luke and they would help me push him sometimes, or I'd hire a babysitter. I had one really good girlfriend who, she would run with me. She was a teacher at the school and would run with me, just be like, we'll just run after school. I know you can't run first thing in the morning anymore. And it, like, thinking back, like, that just meant the world to me, because she made sure I like saw a human that day and could talk to a human. And like, she changed her run schedule for me. She would always drive to my house, because in Germany, like, everyone lived all over the place. She would always say, nope, you have the babysitter. And she had older kids and she like totally got it. And I mean, just having these women that I looked up to them so much, and they really taught me like how to be a mom and a runner and how to be both. And, you know, I don't think all moms don't have to be runners, but all moms need to find something. And I think there is so much power in movement. You know, one of my best friends, like, she loves her Peloton, and I don't really get it, but like, I'm always cheering her on, like, because she's a better person when she's on her bike. Like, I'm a better person when I'm going for a run. And, you know, COVID has taken away, and we moved like in the middle of COVID. So I haven't found anyone to run with. I've done all my training solo, which stinks. And there's some positives to it, but I still talk to my mother runner friends all the time. And we, they're cheering me on and I'm cheering them on their goals. And just like you said, like the running community is so special, because we're there for each other, I think, for sure.
I mean, it's so powerful, because if you didn't take that step to go to that 7-mile run, you don't know. We're probably not talking right now. You probably don't run this amazing marathon. You probably don't feel so like complete again as a person, as a human. Forget about running. Running is what this show's about, but it's so much more. It's like running makes us the best version of ourselves. I say that over and over and over again. You said it in the show. People come on the show and say it. They may change a few words here and there, but that's the truth. That's what it is. We're better spouses. We're better business partners. We're better brothers and sisters or friends, whatever word you want to throw after it. We just are. And your friend on the Peloton, she's better. And it doesn't matter. You have to find your jam. That's exactly right. And whatever that is, find it. But you got to look, and it has to be about movement. The sign in my sports doctor's wall, and by the way, he was on the pod 2 episodes ago, and he's done 14 Ironmans and 35 marathons. And he's one of the most famous sports doctors in the world in New York City. And, it's like movement. It's the giant word. It's like 200 point size. And then underneath it all is just how his whole practice is about getting people to move and continuing to move. And he won't put people on crutches. He goes against a lot of the standard things. Now, of course, sometimes there's really no choice, but for the most part, he always wants you moving. And that's what it's really about. And we're better able to handle the darker days or the difficult times in life when we are able to exercise and move. And so I know firsthand, having that taken away from me, because I would never have even had some insight into what it's like to go through, that kind of battle of not, being able to be light and feel good about myself and feel that energy. And right now I'm just like, please bring me back. Can I just go run like 10 miles or 20 miles? Can I just go run really far? I don't care what pace I can't, I'm not even close to healed right now. It's funny because I actually aborted my run tonight. I always preach all the time to all my friends and people that I've coached over the years. You got to listen to your body. Well, you know what? I don't know 100% that I'm healed yet. I have a stress fracture, and, I didn't get an MRI after when he said to start running. And, until I do, I'm not going to go out and start, he's 15, 20 minutes is one thing, but really running, it's not like an X-ray where I can go in if it's a fractured bone in your foot and you'll know. Like this is, the knee, it's like the brace point of the whole body, and you got to just know for sure. So I'm practicing what I'm preaching. I'm going to listen to my own body. But although I pulled the ripcord of my run tonight, I know that better days are ahead. And for anybody else who's out there who's injured, or anybody else out there who couldn't run, because they were going through a tough time with postpartum, find a group, find some people to connect with, because it could change your life. Look at what it did for Diane. So that's fantastic. And I really appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure your friends who are part of that group, I hope they'll listen to this pod and they'll be like, yeah, we helped. We were a part of the team. We're a part of the team. Yeah, that's good stuff. So you run Frankfurt. That's where you run your 307, right? And Frankfurt is a great course, right? Fantastic, right?
It is. It was, it's pretty flat. That day it was pretty windy and cold. But yeah, I felt great. I don't think I really knew what going into that race, like what I was going to do. My GPS was all messed up because Frankfurt, you start in the city. And then I didn't really plan on, for some reason, I should have thought about kilometer markings, because everything in my mind was miles. So I did so much math in that marathon. I just kept being like, okay, at the 5K marks, I want to be here. But then I get there and be like, wait, but what time was it? Because, I didn't start right when the gun went off. And so, but it was a great race. And that's when I was like, well, can I break 3? Because of course as runners, and that competitive spirit, we want to see what's next. But we wanted to have another son or another baby. We ended up having a son. So I was like, okay, well, when can we get pregnant so I can run Boston? And, 2020 happened and laughed, you make plans and God laughs at you. But that was kind of the plan, was to, let's get pregnant in this window. We also knew we were moving back from overseas. So we were, kind of playing Russian roulette, and it worked out. And I got pregnant shortly after Frankfurt. I ran Athens just for fun 2 weeks later. Probably something James wouldn't let me do, but I used to live on the edge a little bit, but that was like, if anyone ever has the chance to run the Athens Marathon, do it. That was the most amazing experience. But yeah.
And that's where it all started. And you know what? I think it's just part of who you are. It's part of your foundation. I always encourage people to take big swings, and just because you run a couple of marathons close together, it doesn't mean it's going to end badly, but it's certainly not something where you can start saying, I'm going to run 307. Now I'm going to run 303. Like, no, it's not going to work well if you're trying to do that. But if you're just saying, hey, I'm in Berlin or I'm in Chicago and I want to run this race, believe me, if you're healthy and there's nothing wrong with you, there's just absolutely no reason. And I'll debate anyone, including James or Greg McMillan, my old coach, because look, I ran all 6 majors in 2018, all 6 at 58 years old. I averaged 3:15 at 58 years old, and my times were never more than 1 minute apart for all of those races. So the first 3 were in 56 days and the last 3 were in 35 days. So there was like no recovery time. And I ran 2 halves and a 50 miler in that same year. So yeah, I mean, and like I said, I never had a running injury. So this was just, it happened. I ran 60 miles for Tommy Ribs, and I took a really hard fall and smashed my knee like 5 days before, and I couldn't walk. So I just figured, when you're a kid and you play sports, man, you're always smashing a body part. Like, you're talking about playing sports with your brothers. Like, come on, man. I'm like, what's wrong with my knee? I just dinged it. It'll be okay. Little did I know it wasn't okay. But, I got the run done, finished. That's all that mattered. So now we go back and, so Frankfurt, you come back to the States, you have your second baby. Now, where are you guys living at this point?
We are in Missouri.
Missouri.
So we were in Missouri, for a year.
Okay.
Kind of happy about that. It was, everyone when we moved there was like, Missouri? Missouri has cool people, but yeah, it was just, I had a baby and then COVID happened. So like, I felt like I never left my house, besides to go for a run. Like, we were like, oh, Kansas City's nearby. My husband went to KU. So like, he was super excited. He had friends, but by the time we were like, oh, we can like breathe, and we've slept more than like 2 hours with a newborn and a 2-year-old, COVID shut the world down. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly, even if, no matter where you were living, I don't care if you had the greatest house, like a penthouse in New York City, it's a year that none of us are ever going to forget. God knows how many books will be written about it. Too many. Too many movies will be made about it. We're part of history, and not the good kind of history, but we've all lived through something that's going to mark us forever and ever. And, it is what it is. And we've all had to figure out some way to make the best of it. And, obviously races just went away. And I was supposed to be on a plane for Tokyo. I was going the next day to fly to Tokyo to run the Tokyo Marathon, and it got canceled. And all my friends were like, oh, that totally sucks. And I can't believe it. They can't do this. And, people just get negative and they get down and they go into this death spiral. And I was pissed for like 24 hours because I love Japan. I mean, I absolutely adore going to that country. It's so amazing. And if you haven't been, you got to get over there. It's really spectacular, beautiful. And I just love all the castles and the architecture and the old, historic things to see. And then I was like debating, like, what am I going to do? I'm like, I'm going to go to the Olympic trials. So this is going to blend right into our story, because I got to go to the Olympic trials. I got to see a friend of mine, Casey Kilareski, ran 2:43 at CIM and qualified. And I was part of a group at the time. Brendan O'Leary is O'Leary Racing Team, ORT. Another good group. He knows James very, very well. Brendan's an amazing runner himself, run some crazy fast times. I think he was top 20 in Boston one year. He'll kill me for not knowing that. But I worked with them, and Casey was on my podcast, and we went down to see her. I got on the plane, my plans were Tokyo or Scrub. And I'm like, I'm going to the Olympic trials. And I got to tell you, if you were there, your stoke level would be off the hook because, just seeing, and first off, obviously the men run crazy, amazing times, not to say that, but there was just the women's field it was huge. I mean, there were just so many women there, and that was the story. And it wasn't just that there were so many women there. There's so many women there that were crushing it and running crazy times. And to be on that loop style course where you could literally just keep seeing them over and over and over again. And the course was brutal, man. It was windy as hell and it was hilly. Rolling hills that just kind of kept coming, and it really wore the field down. And of course, those kind of races, some people have it that day, some people don't. So there were some surprises, but you run 2:45 and you're right there, man. You're right at the standard. Now, technically, do you have to run under 2:45 to qualify, or you do? Okay. I wasn't sure if they gave you any grace, but I was pretty sure no, but you're right there. Within 45 seconds, something like that, right?
Yeah. So, I was watching Atlanta on my TV. We were actually home on the East Coast, which was perfect timing before COVID. And I made like mom and brother watch it, and they're like, "What are we watching?" And of course, I'm cheering for like all the mother runners, but everyone. I think women's distance running is on fire right now. But I never thought like I could even be thinking about wanting to be there one day. So I think in fall, and I'm probably saying this wrong, people are gonna be like, "What is she talking about?" In fall, they will release the new time standard, maybe late summer, early fall. And then I think then for the next like 3.5 years, you have to hit that standard. I think they're going to lower it a lot. So I don't know if it's going to be reality for me to qualify, but like we have 3.5 years and I'd like to try. I don't know if they lower it to like 2:37. That's going to be like something I can do, but I don't know. Like, we'll see.
Well, it's so exciting. I mean, just think about it. At one point, 3 hours was the dream. And, you're probably thinking, 3:07, if I run 2:59, 2:58, you'd be thrilled. Now you've run 2:45, and it's just such a massive, huge, just crazy amount to chunk off. And not in a race where you have huge crowds, where you have like huge groups of people that you could really get in a pack and work with. Not to say that a race like McKirdy put on doesn't have its perks as well, because you can have somebody out there feeding you your fluids, going alongside you. And I think, did I read in the post that James biked some part of it alongside you, or no? I don't know if I saw that or not. If I didn't, if I got that wrong, please, I apologize.
No, so he was able to. So he biked like, cause he was biking with a runner. So he biked like the first men out in the first loop. It was, you run a mile to these loops, and you did 6 loops and then a mile out. So he rode the second loop with a lead female. And at the time it was another lady. And then I ended up passing her maybe like halfway through that loop. And then, so he was riding with me for a little bit, and another McKirdy trained athlete who we really worked together, talking about like just how amazing runners are. Mike Purley, shout out to him, because we met like at the shakeout run, and James was like, "You guys have the same race plan, get together." And I was like, okay. And then like we showed up at the start line. I don't know this guy. He had run a 2:44 in Indy. I think, not last fall, but the fall prior. And he's like, "Okay, Diane, you ready to go? We're going to go out in 6:25, right?" And I'm like, "Oh man, like we're doing this." So it was pretty windy, and there were some like little hills in the loops, but after 6 times around, they got pretty brutal. But we just started switching off. I think like after like the first like 8 miles, James was like, "You guys just should switch off every mile." Now I'm like 5'3", and he's like at least 6 foot. So I was kind of laughing. So I'm like, how much wind am I really blocking for him? But just to have him, and we were like, okay, an hour in, we need to take our goose, like take your fuel, because he was having some fueling issues that he was working with. And I'm like, did you get it down? Like, just to have him, like, he came in at 2:43. So I lost him around like 21 miles. He took the lead, and I just couldn't keep up. My quads at that point were destroyed from those little hills. But to have him there, and then James came back and biked me in like the last mile, because I was the lead female at that point too. And I think he came, and I was like, "I'm dying." Like, I think that's what I said. And he's like, you're okay. You're okay. And at that point, I was trying to like calculate like how much over, because I was hoping for like 243, how much over time and what my mile splits were. But, as a runner, you always look back, and, I think the night I didn't sleep very well. I traveled all the way back to Idaho, and I kept thinking, did I go out too fast? I didn't. It just, between the wind, it was cold, I think. And just your quads, like even James was like, that course was a lot harder than we thought it was. I know they hold a last chance to BQ, and people, they're like these rolling little hills, but after 6 times and, you have 20 something miles on your legs, I was, I think my slowest mile was like 640. It wasn't like drastic, but it feels drastic when you're like kind of, I wanted to be at that point in the marathon in the 610s or lower. But yeah, having James there, he was like, just think minute by minute. And I just like, I just need the start line to come. And it felt like it took forever, or finish line, sorry, not start line, finish line to come. But, having him there, and I never met James, like, I'd been working with him for 13 months, but I had met him in person just the day before. And it didn't seem like that. James will call you and text you, and we were pretty open communication. But just having him there, thinking back on it, and even that day, like, I'll never be in a race. Like, how lucky, like what they put on was something so special, because I'll never be on a race where my coach is like telling me to drop my arm a little bit. And like, 'cause that was the first time he ever saw me run in real life. And like, teaching me how to run the tangents, because I really didn't understand how to do that. And, in a looped course, that really matters. Like, that's what the McKirdy, marathon brought. And, I run alone all the time. Like, I think I miss like Philly and Boston. Like, you're never going to get that energy anywhere else, but I don't know. It doesn't bother me not to have it. And maybe I'll say that I'm hoping to run Chicago, and hopefully there's big crowds. I don't know what COVID will bring, but I'm sure it makes a little bit of a difference. But I think we just really looked at my fitness and said, this is what I should be able to run. Let's pace smart, and kind of just laid the plan down. We had to take away like maybe that adrenaline and all that extra stuff you get in bigger races.
It's just a phenomenal performance. It absolutely just truly amazing. You absolutely killed it. And what an experience for you to team up and run with another athlete. And although you guys didn't go all the way together, you're able to work off each other and, kind of help each other with the wind, et cetera. And then having James there at the end is always a great thing. But it's a remarkable performance. It's a huge breakthrough. It's not like you run 250 and then you ran 245 and you come from 307 to 245. It's just an enormous chop in time. And without racing, where you can really hone and sharpen, I'm sure you can talk a little bit about, you probably did some 5K stuff. You probably did some time trial things. I'm sure you had workouts where he was asking you to hit paces and do all the things that any good coach would ask you to do, that you said some really poignant things in there. Racing is where we sharpen. Racing is where we hone ourselves, man. When you get into a big race, it isn't just the crowds, it's all the other people that are running by you or alongside you that you just say, hey, I'm going to latch onto this guy or girl. I couldn't care less if somebody's a man or a woman. And if somebody's running at a good pace and I think I'm going to go catch this person, that's it. I got to stay on their shoulder. I got to get up to them at this next hill or before the next corner. I got to close the gap. That's how you shorten a race. And when you're in the struggle zone or things are getting hard, you just try to, whatever you do, man, look down, look ahead, just look for 3 traffic lights, but don't keep looking at your watch. Just do anything you can to just, try to shorten, that mental battle. And that's where I think like mantras are so important, into the mindset game while you're working. Fueling is so critical, man. If you screw your fueling up, no way are you running a 245, a 307, whatever time you're shooting for. That time is a 317 and it's a 255, because if you don't get your nutrition right, you will fail. You will unravel, and your worst mile won't be a 640 when you're running, 620 average or 625 average. It's going to be a 740 or an 840. And that won't be 1 mile. That might end up being 4 or 5 in a row, and it might even devolve further. So it just depends on the heat, the humidity, the wind, And, how badly did you miss? How many calories under are you? How many fluids short were you? And then you go from there. So, I mean, what a cool experience. Now, did you guys get to all hang out after the race?
We didn't. So unfortunately, I flew home that day. It was really cold after the race. I mean, Mike, Pearlie, and I had to go like walk and get some of our like stuff we had dropped because I started running a jacket, and after the first loop had thrown it, but running jackets are not cheap. So I'm like, I want to go back and get that jacket. Like, and he had dropped some stuff, and James was still race directing. So he was out there like, gosh, for a couple more hours. So I went back to my hotel and showered and then flew home, which I'm like, I just booked my flight or hotel in Chicago. And I'm like, I am leaving Monday, even though Chicago's closer to Idaho. I'm like, I am never staying on a plane after running a marathon again. It was brutal. But we got to do a shakeout run before, and just meeting the whole McKirdy family. His wife was there. I think he had 5 runners, and she had like a 4 or 5. And then there were some other McKirdy trained athletes, but it was just really cool. And especially on a looped course, I passed some people, and, if you had a McKirdy trained jersey on, I was like, go McKirdy. I mean, it was really cool. Although I don't know how many, I would say maybe half weren't McKirdy trained athletes. And, the energy was there on the starting line. The girl that was in the lead, she ended up dropping out, unfortunately. She said, this is my goal. And I said, well, I'm a little behind you, but if we ever get to, let's work together. And when I passed her, I thought she was going to try and work together, but she just it wasn't her day. But that's just runners for you. We were out there and we all wanted to run fast, and we were grateful to have the opportunity to race because for a lot of us, it was the first time in a long time. I was very lucky. I ran Gate River in Florida. I guess it was in March. That was really my first time in a race setting in over 2 years.
And how did that go? It was windy, right?
It was super windy, which I'm like, this wind, I can't escape the wind, because in the springtime in Idaho, it's super windy here, which I didn't know. I've never lived this far west. I'm so over the wind. But yeah, it was a super windy day. It was my first time ever. James got me in the elite field, which I was like, I don't belong here. Running next, just seeing woman that I've looked up to, and then trying to play it cool and not being sign me. I just think you're amazing. Not that I was competing against them, but I was in the race and I did well. I didn't get last. That was my goal, not to get last. And in the elite, the 15K championships. And, I was proud of what I was able to do. And just to I think after the race, I texted James and I was like, I got to freaking race, and it was freaking awesome because it was just it was a warm up for the marathon. I think it lessened my anxiety a little bit, but just to have that experience, is my first time leaving, my almost 2-year-old come August. I had to wean him before I left for the trip. I was living the life, my teammates were like, how did you sleep? And I was like, I slept fantastic, even though I had a race the next day. I didn't have kids waking me up or a husband, stealing the covers. It was a mom vacation, and then I had to run a race. But
a mom staycation with a race thrown in, for sure. Escape from realities of everyday life. That's great. And, it has to feel like that. All of a sudden you have an elite bib on, and even though you absolutely deserve it, it's got to feel like that. One of my closest training partners had an elite bib in Boston, and although she absolutely deserved it, she talked about, what it felt like, just rolling up to the start line where their names are on the bib versus a number. And, she's hanging out, and Dez is there and everything. And, literally she almost missed the start of the race, just it was just crazy, how it all turned out. But what a incredibly cool experience for you. And that's what I'm saying. You haven't had these opportunities. None of us have, not really. Even the few races that have been around have been, wear a mask at the start, wear a mask at the finish, wear a mask at, not racing when we really can race and not have to have all these crazy fears in our head. Okay, we can't touch elbows with somebody or give somebody a hug. And, obviously it's coming soon enough. I mean, I know I got the J&J vaccine because I only wanted to get one. I didn't feel like getting two if I didn't have to. And I'm glad I did. Sure, I'm not worried about every single metric that tells you what the efficacy is. Like I've never gotten the flu in my life, and I've never gotten the flu shot because my immune system and my health is good. But I'm not going to not take a COVID shot because my health is good. You better believe I'm going to take a COVID shot. So soon enough, but not as soon as we want. I can tell you right now, Berlin, Oktoberfest canceled. Good luck to all my friends who think Berlin's happening, because if they canceled Oktoberfest, I can tell you right now, they're not running the Berlin Marathon. It's not happening. I hope it happens. I want more than anything in the world for it to happen, but London will happen. I can tell you with certainty London will happen. I know Boston's going to happen with a reduced field, and I know New York will happen. I also think the same of Chicago.
Okay, I was like, Chicago. That's
no, I think Chicago, Carrie Pinkowski's been race directing since I ran there in 1996. I ran 240 there in 1996. So that'll always be my fastest. And I ran with a lot of elite women that day. And this is back before women are running the insane times they are today. And I was with them for 23 miles and just working together and just running so strong, maybe around 24 miles. They just drop kicked my ass. I mean, they went from like 233, 234, 235, 236. And then when they saw me, they're like, "You ran 240?" I'm like, "Yeah." And like, "What happened?" I'm like, I couldn't run. I was dead. You're talking about your worst mile. I think I ran a 6:58 or 6:59, like my last mile. And, when I was almost at 7 flat, where I'd been running 6 flat, 6:01, 6:03. I went through 20 miles in like 1:59:58 or something. But, it was the coolest experience ever because there wasn't anybody around. It was just like elite women, a couple of guys, and but it was such a cool experience. So I think it's so awesome that you have all of this crazy cool stuff in front of you. And if you can find a group, the way you did in Germany, where you were able to balance some of that stuff out with scheduling and get some people to do some group runs with, the junk miles are the junk miles. Honestly, those are more for conversation and just to have some community and just, blow off steam. And, what I started this podcast because, that same woman I was talking about, Kate Powerty, who ran 236 in Boston, and she won the JFK 50, my favorite ultra right here. I got to give them some love because they're my favorite ultra. We talked about what we talk about in the run stays in the run. It's like Vegas, like what you talk about in the run stays in the run. And you wouldn't believe the things that they would tell me, her and her friends, about their husbands and their kids. And I'd just be like, "What? Like, what did you just say?" But that was it. And the same thing goes for me. Like I would say crazy things back to, but it was like, it was like talking to the priest and, confession. It was safe. It was sanctified grounds. It was all okay. And that's kind of how I wanted the pod to be, like a conversation between runners, just chatting and just like talking about everything. So if you have this great coach, James is fabulous. It's also a great group. I know a bunch of people that run, and I don't know if they're all coached by James, but they're McKirdy athletes. So I can connect you with a bunch of them for your Instagram and know that they'd be good for you. Just to, moms, runners, badasses, probably just be good to chat with and connect with and maybe meet at a race. Who knows? Maybe some of them are running Chicago, if that's going to be your big goal race. So I'm not doing Chicago this year, but I think it's a great course for you. I mean, it's just a fantastic course. The crowds are phenomenal. It's just flat as a pancake. Sure, you have a couple of rises when you go over bridges and inclines and stuff, but it's not any real hills. Although I have to tell you, that last stupid hill before you turn left at the finish there, it seems like a real hill. Go out and run it like the day before at a shakeout, and you'll be like, "This isn't a hill." But, at the end of 26 miles, just like you said, when you were doing those loops, it didn't seem like anything. But, when you're on the 4th or 5th or 6th loop, all of a sudden, those little rises don't feel like little rises anymore. All of a sudden, it's like, "Oh, man, are you kidding me? I got to go back up this thing again." So I think Chicago, you're rolling. And I'm sure James is probably going to be able to get you an elite bib, I would think, right?
I'm not sure. We haven't talked about it yet. So yeah, I'm still on my no run break recovery.
Good.
I snuck out for a tiny little jog today and my body was like, "Yeah, I don't think you're ready to run yet." So we'll see.
Well, no one's going to know that you went for a run. I mean, other than the people who listen to this podcast. So you're safe.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I pushed my kids. We ran to the park. I got it okayed by the coach. Like you, struggling with injury, I think. Not that I can compare, but week off running, I'm like, a little like, what do I do with my life? Like, you just get so used to it. And, I think also like a little bit of that, like, not Olympic letdown, not that I'm an Olympian, but like, I've been training for a marathon, even though, I was training for Boston, it didn't happen. I was training for the Boise Marathon, it didn't happen. And I think it helped me because like I had almost three complete marathon cycles before I ran the McKirdy Marathon, but my body never took that like hit that your body takes when you run a marathon. So it just like I had so much building and we had so much time, but it was like a whole, over a year process where I felt like, at some points we took breaks and we did some time trial stuff, and I had a big break around the holidays, but I've been in this constant, like, I'm going to run this marathon for a year now, and it happened and it's done. And I'm like, okay, like, I mean, I think I achieved my goal, but now what's next? And let me get back out there. But my body's like, oh no, you need a couple more days off. Nice try.
That's great though. And I think that's one of the things that Stroller is really good for too. When Ronnie was little and, God bless, he's 23 now and, he's a terrific runner in his own right. Although he's not really into it right now, but I just can't wait till he really wants to get back. He still runs for sure. And they go on these crazy 6 and 7 hour hikes, him and his girlfriend in the mountains. And that they love that. And that's wonderful that they're doing it together. But man, does he have the genes, for endurance running. And just like you, man, it was like the longer the distance went, the better he did. And when he ran a 10-mile race or a half marathon, I was like, he didn't slow down at all. So he'll get there one day. And that would be like the coolest father-son thing ever. Like, your dad was a runner and, brought you all into it, and then your brothers and all, and you have that kind of family thing together. But that would be the coolest thing ever, to run like Boston or New York with him one day and just run a marathon together. But he better not wait too long because, who knows, but hopefully I'll still be doing this like 20 years from now or 30 years from now, because people are doing crazy things, man. It's amazing, the longevity that people have in the sport, which is the opposite of what everyone tries to tell you. Oh, you're going to mess up your knees. Oh, you're going to mess up your back. Oh, you're going to do this and that. Like, come on, people, get a grip, do a little research. You'll get hurt in running if your mechanics are bad. If you have one leg that's, an inch longer or shorter than another, and you don't have some sort of adjustment, corrective wear to adjust, if you have huge pronation issues or other things, and you're not wearing motion control shoes, these are all correctable things. If somebody's looking at how you run and helping you and just giving you some guidance, you can run, and you can be healthy and you can do cool things. So good stuff.
For sure. And I love that running's lifelong, I think that's what my first coach, even, when I was like 14 years old, cross country coach, like, she's like, this is something you can do the rest of your life. And like, we're still friends on Facebook, and she still likes my post if I post about running. And it is something like, not that you can't play baseball, but you don't see it. Like, running is something that you can just do forever. Maybe not 100% for your whole life, but it's always something that can be there for you.
It's such a great point, because it's exactly why I wanted to keep playing in hardball leagues, because I was a Division I college baseball player, and my friends all went the beer drinking softball route, and that just wasn't me. You get it. You come from a competitive family. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to go to the bar and drink like 20 beers and, be out of shape and, go run around playing softball. Softball's great. It's fun. It's really fun, but hardball is a whole different thing. And, I quickly realized, in my mid 30s, I was still enjoying it, but, it wasn't the same. And I was like, I need to do something else, and stumbled into running and, triathlon. And it's just been the coolest thing ever. And, I've got friends in my 70s who are just absolutely still killing it. I know Gene Dykes has run sub 3 hour marathons in his 70s. I mean, there's a woman in Japan, like 62, who's run a sub 3 marathon. And there's people just doing crazy things, and not just fast times, ultra marathons, 100-mile runs, like stuff like that. So that's what still ignites me, and having conversations with really awesome people like you, like that, their life could have changed. I mean, you could have stayed in this darker spot. You could have stayed in the spot where you just weren't you, and you weren't happy with who you were, and you were feeling this massive pressure and anxiety, and you can be overwhelmed, and your whole life changed because you started running again, and you met some people who you connected with the way Kristen did. And it just changes everything. Just like it changes for other friends of mine who've had bouts with alcoholism or drugs or other things, like there's always a way if you're willing to like look around for help. But to me, running is the key to help for everything. It helps everybody who's been through any of these sorts of issues. And believe me, if depression was never a problem for anyone in their life, it could sure have happened in the year of COVID. Because for me, with 3 months of no running, like I just literally have to like make things up. I mean, my bike trainer is behind me. That's my real racing bike. It's not a Peloton bike. And there's only so many rides I can do staring at the computer, pretending, I really care about this ride. And when I ride outside, I love it. But some days I miss just the way you miss running with groups of people, like just going on a 40 or 50-mile ride alone where I'm just like riding around. Sure, it's nature and I'm outside and it's beautiful, but you're not having a little conversation and banter with your friends. You don't take a little break and just, have a Gatorade or something, or eat a gel and just chat and then say, all right, let's keep rolling. Let's do another 20 or 30. And, so like running, that's the beauty of running. That's why it's so pure. You don't need anything. You need your running shoes and you need some form of clothing, and not a whole lot, depending on where you are. You need some clothes. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. I mean, I always talk about safety. So for women, they got to be very careful about, where they go, particularly when they're running somewhere where they don't know. And, is it a safe area? Did they have somebody who knows where they're going? All that other stuff. But for guys, it is definitely a lot different. But man, I know, just like you, when I could go back and do some real runs again, I'm going to be a happy guy, or I should say a happier guy. I am a happy guy, but I'll be even more happy. So, I'm so glad that you shared a lot, because it's a big part of your story. And, I know that any other mom who's had an issue like that, whether it's their first child or multiple children or whatever, or maybe they were running earlier when they had their first kid, and then after 2 or 3, they just felt overwhelmed and didn't get back to it. Maybe they feel like their weight isn't good, their body image is good, all those things you talked about. And they're just like, it's not going to make a difference. Yes, it will. It may be a very slow process to get to that difference. And maybe in their case, you were able to connect with the women in Germany, but, it might have to be a Peloton, use a Peloton, as your way to communicate and connect with other people, because, even though you don't really know the instructor, it's still, they're there, they're on that screen, whether it's a guy or a woman shouting and talking and trying to get you excited. And you see all the data coming at you and people are messaging and communicating, like you got to find a way. So that part, good stuff.
Yeah. And even I think having a coach, has really helped this past year, because they're checking in on you, right? Like it's just another form of accountability, but also a community. And I can't speak for other coaching services, but I really think McKirdy Trained has really created a community, within its runners. No matter if you're, I am not the fastest runner of James that I coach, but I'm not the slowest, but I feel like they do a really good job of like treating every athlete the same. And creating that little community, whether it be on Instagram or Facebook or, and even this past week, like, James posting me on the McKirdy page, like I've had so many moms like reach out to me, and I love it. Like, what worked best for you? I just had my second kid. Like, how do you get your runs in? Or way to go. Like, this gives me like, my time is similar to you and I have big dreams like you have. And this gives me like hope. And I try to reply, not like I have hundreds coming in, it's a few, but they really matter. And, I love that my story can help, another mom, I think is really important, or not even a mom, like anyone.
It actually can help anyone. And I'm really happy that you say that, because look, there are single dads at home too. Sometimes the mom has left and it's the dad's responsibility, or maybe a mom has passed on. There's all sorts of reasons why a man could be the only caregiver in a household. And, I don't ever want to, leave them out of the equation, because they can be dealing with all of these same sorts of anxiety issues and feeling like it's all on them and they're trapped and they don't have that escape. And, figuring out a way is just so important. And like we both talked about earlier, it doesn't have to be running. It can be finding something else, man. It could be, doing some online Zoom calls with other moms or other dads or just anything. But it is about connection and community. And, to your point on coaching, whether that's one-on-one with James or whomever else, because he's got multiple and other talented coaches in his group, or even if it's connecting with other athletes in the group. And yes, it is wonderful to be seen and noticed and have other moms reaching out to you. It's wonderful because you have a chance to have an impact on other moms that are going through a similar situation. And I hope that they'll listen to this pod and hear your voice and the passion you talked about it with. Because like I said, I could see you light up. I could see a change in you when you talked about that whole experience, because you're proud of it. You should be proud of it. It's really empowering to be in a tough spot like that and to be lifted up, because we're not good at asking for help in life. A lot of people want to help others, and we're good human beings and we really care for others. But when it comes time that we actually need the help, we're actually not really good at it. We're really good at offering help, and we're really good at wanting to be a good brother or sister or a good mom or a dad or, a good husband, whatever the case might be. But a lot of times when we're stuck, we don't raise our hand and say, hey, Diane, I could use a hand. I feel like crap lately because I'm not running, man. Hey, let's do a Zoom call for 15 minutes, because to me, it's the connection. That's what I miss out of COVID. I miss running with my friends because I'm the guy who sets up all those big community runs. And they're not, a lot of them are just easy social runs. We have team workouts like McKirdy. I run for Central Park Track Club. Now that's, we have coaches on our team. I'm not coached by any of those coaches, but they're amazing coaches. We have track and field, we have Olympians, we have, an amazing group of athletes, from sprinters and heptathletes and triathletes to all the way up to ultra marathoners. But they've been training all year and they've been following all these COVID protocols. But my mom's going to be 89 and she's got lymphoma, and she did get COVID during this year and came through it like a champ because she's a beast and she's a fighter. But I just didn't want to put her or anybody else in my circle, at risk. So I've missed all of that. So I know what you're saying, and kudos to you for getting that work done, alone, getting those runs done alone, grinding those miles, doing the key workouts, doing the time trials, leading up to you getting to go to the gate run and actually get to run a real race. And then obviously, coming through at McKirdy and crushing that.
Well, thank you.
So I want to ask you about community, because it was one of the things that I had messaged with you back and forth, and or coaching. Because I think, do you do some coaching also? Because I think I meant to ask you about that. I thought you did some coaching also, right?
After I graduated from Cabrini College, it's now university, I was their assistant cross country coach for a couple of years before my husband and I got married and moved away. And then I just got hired the local high school here off base. We live on the military base, but the closest town is Mountain Home, Idaho. I just got hired as their head boys and girls, I don't know, men's and women's, I don't know what you call high school kids, cross country coach. We'll start our summer, kind of workouts here. So I'm really excited. We have I think it's a pretty small team, but there's some talented athletes, and I'm just really excited to, kind of just share my passion and knowledge and help them reach their goals.
That's fabulous. It's going to help you so much. Because you get to take your learnings and your wisdom from your coaches that have had an impact on you and, put that, imprint on them. You also have people to run with now. So
I know.
And let me tell you something. You said you got some talent. There's some people for you to run with right there, man. I'll be like, I need a tempo run on Thursday. Which one of you is coming to work with me? Here we go. Got to help out coach. So that's good. That's exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. It will give me some time away. My kids will start like a little daycare program, Montessori school. Because of COVID, we didn't have them go to anything last year. And, my son's almost 4 and he's like a social butterfly. He needs it. My other one's like a clingster, so he needs it. So
I love it.
I think it will just be good for our family. So I'm really excited about the opportunity.
Super, super. Well, you're going to have to fill us in on that and how that's going. And on the community service side, it's something that's near and dear to me. Could you talk a little about something you've done? Because I know you had some experience there, both in Germany and I think in Idaho also, but just talk a little about that.
Yeah. So with COVID, I've been involved with Girls on the Run since college. It's a very well-known nonprofit organization. I started coaching, I believe, in college, and then I brought it to my school when I started teaching. And, I coached there until I moved away. And then unfortunately they didn't have it in Germany. I looked and I was like, oh, the elementary schools, but they didn't have it. And to bring it overseas and start a chapter just seemed crazy. But this past fall, I connected with the Treasure Valley group up in Boise, and they needed virtual coaches because they did virtual Girls on the Run for girls that were doing virtual learning. And the amount of time that like Girls on the Run as an organization put in to make Girls on the Run work, because girls need it like more than ever, was just, mind blowing. And so I was a virtual coach, like right in my bedroom, my kids like playing, and that was awesome. And they didn't have it. We live about 45 minutes outside of Boise. They didn't have it at our military base. And I'm like, I'm going to bring it here. So I did. So I just finished practice right before a call. So we have 10 girls, and, we wear masks outside. But it's amazing. Like just to see, it's more about running Girls on the Run. If you're not familiar with the program, it's more about empowering, it's 3rd through 5th graders. Today our lesson was on like standing up for yourself and your friends. But I love that program, especially, I struggled a lot of my teens and youth with body image and eating disorder, and let's talk about it now and prevent it before it can happen. Not that I didn't have that in my life, but I think just having more and more programs, and, also using movement. Like we say, as long as you're moving in Girls on the Run, like that's okay. Like, some of the girls don't like to run. That's okay. Like, let's hop, let's walk, let's, pick up rocks and then run to the next rocks. Like, some of them are very distractible, but I love the program. I'm so happy to be a part of it. I was kind of sad I didn't have a girl because I have 2 boys, but I think, as long as I can, I'd love to, be involved with Girls on the Run. I think it's an awesome program. And then in Germany, I was involved with Stroller Warriors. So I kind of talked about that a little bit. That was one of the moms. She was one of the leaders of it, that got me kind of out of the house and said, like, come meet other moms. Like you can stop in the middle of your run. And if your kid's screaming because they need to eat, like, go ahead and feed them. Like, so Stroller Warriors is a nonprofit organization. And I was, pretty involved in Germany as a workout leader, and then just as a participant. Unfortunately, the last 2 bases we've been at haven't had it, but they just bring moms together. You bring your stroller and your babies. It was created, I think, by 2 women because, our husbands are always gone. Our wives, men can come too. They're gone, they're deployed, they're out in the fields, they're on TDYs. So you have your running stroller and you have your kids, and we're going to go run. But what I really loved about the program and really found inspiring, as, I had run before I was a mom, was there these moms that came out because we met 4 days a week and it was free. So like, and we would always play after at a park or have like a social, we did some like socials outside of running, but there were women who had never run a day in their lives. And then like, were asking me to help them train for their first marathon, and their whole life changed because of running. And like, they still run, but the only reason they really came out for it was because they were like, I need to get out of the house. I live in a foreign country and this is free. We get outside, my kids can play. And then like, oh wait, I like running. Like, this is fun. And, we started, each season with like a couch to 5K, or they started the couch to 10K. Like, it wasn't, everyone was welcome.
That's 2 wonderful things. Yeah, I definitely know GOTR. Lots of other women runners are involved with like local chapters and talk about it with great pride and energy. And definitely the military I mean, my gosh, I mean, there's so much time where one spouse is completely gone, and it is that one that's left on the base, if you will, or if it's an off base situation. And to get together, and again, it's just movement. That's all it is. You're even talking about with Girls on the Run. If they don't want to run, so what? You're getting them to go outside, go walk along a stream, go on a hike somewhere, go do something. And the ones who like to run, as long as you can see where they are, it's all good. As long as their phones are away and they're actually paying attention, to just like hanging out and enjoying each other. I'm not saying they can't, everybody's going to take selfies. That's life. This is the life we live in. I'm the king of selfies, so I know all about it, but, it's wonderful that you're active in those particular things, and that you've had an impact, that getting women to run who would never have run. And now they're, potentially training for marathons one day, and running is playing a big part in their lives. So kudos to you on that. And for sharing your amazing running breakthrough. I mean, it's just remarkable. And believe me, you haven't hit your full peak yet. You're just getting it together. And it's great that you're working with James, because, he's going to be very patient with you, and, he's going to put a real long-term plan together, and it's going to be exciting to see what you guys do together. I'm excited to see where you can take it from here for sure. And I'm sure everybody listening is as well.
Well, thank you so much, Ron. It's been awesome talking with you. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, the pleasure has been all mine. And before we roll out of here, I just want to make sure I give you an opportunity if there's anything else big that we didn't get a chance to cover off on for, 2021. It doesn't have to be running related, just anything else that maybe you just haven't had a chance to cover.
I don't think so. I think we hit it all. I think my biggest thing, and I think James put it like in his post, but I've always had like big dreams and big goals, but I don't really tell people, or I'm afraid, they're almost like too big. But believe in yourself. And, I look at, the Olympic trials women, a lot of them are all Americans, and they were phenomenal athletes in college. And, their first marathon, they debuted at 2:45. And that's not me. And that's okay. Like, this sport, I think running is so versatile. And that's what makes it awesome. But just because you don't line up with maybe other people that are trying similar times or similar goals as you, doesn't mean you don't belong. And I mean, I have to work on that a lot, but you do, and your dreams matter, and you don't have to, you don't have to be perfect to reach perfection, I think is what the post said. And I think that's what, I'm going to remember. And I hope, your listeners remember moving forward, is just, keep going, keep showing up. Like Des Linden says, I think that's one of my favorite quotes. And if you want to do something, like, it matters, and figure out a way to do it.
I love it. Commit to it. Put it down in writing. Put it on your bathroom wall, your refrigerator, like Ogden says. Write it down. Put it somewhere where you can see it every single day, and don't be afraid of it. Anything really big in life that's really hard should be scary as hell. It should scare the living crap out of you to say it out loud. Like, I want to make the Olympic trials. I want to run in the Olympic trials. Yeah, that's scary. I don't think it's going to drop that far, 245 to 238, but it could. It's totally possible. Some people have said maybe even 237, like you said, but that's still well within reach for you. So it's going to be fun. And obviously you're willing to do the work. And it's going to be fun to follow along. So thanks for sharing all this great stuff with the RunChats audience and me. I'm excited to keep following along. And I think a lot of our talking points today are going to resonate so much with our listeners. So thank you so much for sharing all the great stuff tonight.
Thank you. Have a great night, and heal well, heal fast and well.
Thank you. Well, we close out every show with, we tell everybody to keep lacing them up, keep getting out the door, and always remember to stay in the fight.